welcome to Book World, The Great Escape. I am author CJ Peterson. Let's see if I can point this the correct direction. This is author Michael Scott Clifton. Today we have our special guest, author Kevin Pettway, correct? Pettway?
Hello, yes.
Okay, awesome. We got it. So we'll talk to you in just a second, sir. First, Mike, how was your weekend?
Well, was at the boys state basketball tournament here in Texas, which was my 34th year to attend.
Wow.
And got back late Sunday. And Melanie, when I got home, she'd already left to go on a kind of a once-in-a-lifetime European trip with her sister, Beth. So I've been bachelor in it for 4 days now, 3 days. Let's see. Yeah. Well, Sunday, Saturday, Monday, 4 days. Anyway, so I'm having to do things that I normally don't do. Those of you who are married out there, you know, we kind of tend to be partnerships, and some of the things that Melanie used to do, I'm having to do now. So I'm a little rusty, CJ, but I'm hanging in there. But
how do you keep all this stuff moving and rotating at the same time?
Right.
Well,
tomorrow I do speak to the Lions Club, which I'm looking forward to that opportunity. Talk to them about books, Mount Pleasant Lions Club, and I've never spoken to the Lions Club before, so it'll be a new experience for me. But I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, this weekend was Comic Conroe. For those who follow me on any of my social medias, it was pretty much plastered everywhere. It was a blast. We had so much fun. The guests for this year were Vic Mignogna, Jimmy Hart, wrestler Jimmy Hart with a megaphone. We had, I'm trying to get my stack over there. Chuck Huber was over there, Greg Sipes, Paul Taylor Thomas, the Pinhead from the third Hellraiser movie was there. We had tons and tons of artists and vendors, cosplayers. The cosplay contest for the adults and the kids was a blast. We had just, so much fun. And I love doing Comic-Cons. I love covering them. I'm covering them from Magic Making Mischief. So that was a treat. And then my next show is actually going to be Chautauqua Festival in April at the Longview Public Library. One of my favorites. It's one of the few outdoors. It's this one and Kogogeekon are the only two that I do outdoors, because CJ and outdoors don't go together when it comes to shows. No, I don't. Little known fact, I don't sweat. So when it's hot outside, my face looks like a tomato. So yeah, it's not pretty. It's not a picture anybody wants to see. So we have fun. We enjoy them. So he's dying down there.
I'm just thinking, I kind of want to see that now.
Yeah. If you look at the video I did from our cruise for Magic Making Mischief, one of the outings we had to hike. Oh gosh, they said it was like 1,000 steps up and partway down. And in it, you can see my face is red as a tomato. Yeah, it's red. And then we jumped into like ice cold water. So that was fun. But speaking of having to do the house and batching yourself, Mr. Mike, Mr. Kevin down there is a domestic engineer.
Oh, okay.
We're talking.
So I discovered in the pre-show.
Oh, okay.
AKA house husband, as he says. But I said that's a domestic engineer. But he's also multi-talented because he's an author as well. So welcome, Kevin.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about your genre, swords and sorcery? What does it entail?
So swords and sorcery generally is well, it's pretty much what it says on the tin. It's an adventure genre, which is really the only thing that it has to have in it to qualify is, swords and magic. But within that umbrella, there are almost as many different subgenres as there are genres, period, because you can kind of stick anything in there. You can have little character pieces, you can have epic world spanning fantasy, you can kind of go anywhere with it.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is humorous, sort of adult oriented fantasy, which first time I said that to somebody, they said, well, now I'm just picturing, naked elves all over the place, which it's not that. It's just,
I'm
it's
kind of
stories for adults.
like The Princess Bride meets whatever genre you're in.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think of it as being somewhere in between like Terry Gilliam and Joe Abercrombie.
Okay.
So, so somewhere in between there. It's it can get dark, but the actual goal for me when I started writing, particularly this last series, was to write something that was a little bit of a lighter read that left you happier when you had finished, as opposed to I like a lot of fantasy out there today, and a lot of it's really good, and it does not diminish my enjoyment of it, but a lot of it is also very, very heavy, and it's Red Wedding kind of stuff. Again, good, but very heavy. And I wanted something you could laugh at. I wanted something that would make people happy. So that's where I went.
Awesome. Now, you have how many books out? 4, 5?
We just published the 5th book in January, which was that was the final one in this series.
Okay. What's the series, and kind of give us a brief overview of it?
Sure. The series is Misplaced Mercenaries, and it follows Keen and Sarah, who are the mercenaries from the title. And they begin on the run from their mercenary camp because Keen has done something terrible to upset the boss, who wants to kill him in the morning. They're best friends. They remain
upset.
Yeah, they remain best friends throughout the entire series. And Sarah breaks him out. They flee. On the way out, Keen steals the company wage box because he thinks it would be really funny. They didn't really need the money or anything. The mercenary commander gives chase, and when he does, the other mercenaries very quickly come to realize that there's something else that he's after. He's not just after that money box, but he won't tell them what it is, and they don't know. And that's what kicks off the entire adventure. And it just gets increasingly crazy from there.
So on your website, if you go to your website, kevinpettway.com, you can sign up for your newsletter, but you also get a little free book that goes with it. How does that fit into the series lineup?
That is a short story that, it's there for free, like you said. And it is actually immediately prior to the opening of the first book. You don't have to read it to enjoy the first book at all. But it's particularly if you are thinking, fantasy humor, I don't know how that would look. Would I enjoy that? The short story is there to give you an idea of the humor in the books, and so you'll find out, would I like this or not?
That's a really cool way to kind of give them a taste of it, kind of like a little business card idea.
Right.
Yeah, a little bit.
So, Kevin, I get asked this a lot, and I know CJ does as well. Book shows, Comic-Cons, things that we attend. What is are your books geared toward adults? If you had to, can teenagers read them? If you were assigning movie ratings, what would you assign? your books? And that's what I generally tell a lot of the ones that ask, well, so PG-13, something like that.
Yeah. So typically when I get asked that question, I would say, and let me just preface this by saying that I am not a parent. But I would think that a 14-year-old would be completely fine reading any of my books. I would give them, I can't remember which one is which are PG-13, but there's not really a lot of sex, but there's, obviously there's violence and a lot of cussing. The cussing is actually one of the things that people remark on the most, because it's I spent a lot of time and effort making the cussing very creative.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just F this, F that. It's there's some thought behind each one of them, and they're intended to be funny in and of themselves. The other thing that I will frequently tell people is that it really depends on the kid.
Mm-hmm.
And if they say, can my child read your book? I say, well, it depends on how exceptional your child is. And that usually sells a book. So, because, everybody's kid is exceptional.
True.
But I mean, if I was reading books like this when I was 11, it didn't
scar you.
Well, that I know of.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. But 14 and up, I wouldn't have any problem with.
Gotcha. So how long have you been published? I'm going to say writing, but we're all pretty much, most authors that I know have been writing since they were like younglings and going forward, but.
Yeah, the first book got published 6 or 7 years ago, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That seems about right. It wasn't long after I first met my publisher.
His publisher is Kelly Lynn Colby for Curse Dragonship, which we've had on her on a couple of times.
Right.
She's a dynamo. So
she's astounding. I will never have enough good things to say about her.
Mm-hmm. And her energy is endless. As I often tell people, it's kind of like somebody put Red Bull in her coffee.
Yeah. Several Red Bulls.
Yeah. She's like Mach 10, and how she keeps it straight, I don't know. It's awesome.
I don't know, but there's one really fun thing about that, is that because she's always going, she's always moving, and she's always interested. She works really, really hard for her authors, and universally, her authors would do practically anything for her.
Sure.
I know I would.
Yeah.
And I don't really know how typical that is in a writer publisher relationship. But I have seen some folks really pull out the stops to help her out, and it's been really wonderful to see. It's very much a family over there.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and most of the author community actually is, which is the really good part about the author community. We're not really in competition as far as we're concerned. As long as you're reading, we're good.
Good.
Yeah.
Because reading is starting to be a dying art. The audiobooks and movies, etc. So when it comes to your book, you mentioned that the little bit of humor is not normally in Swords and Sorceries. Is that the only thing that kind of differs you from other sword and sorcery type genre books?
Well, that might be a little bit broad. The way that I write, as we were discussing in the pre-show, I try really hard to ground the characters. The sword and sorcery genre generally has people dealing with very outsized stakes. really big, larger than life situations. And I think it's a lot of fun to take people in those situations, and instead of like, so when you see on,
Instead of like an epic journey like Lord of the Rings or something.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings is actually what I was going to say. Everybody in all the characters in Lord of the Rings treat the situations they're in as this is the world that I live in. It's matter of fact. It makes sense that one thing follows from the next, and everybody is treating it very seriously. And when I write, I tend to think, how would I really react in this situation? And I wouldn't be that calm about it. I wouldn't be that, I wouldn't be that matter of fact. I wouldn't be just, oh, well, obviously what I need to do is, climb up this creature's back and stab him in the eye. And, no, I'd be screaming and running.
Should be too. I'd be going the other direction.
Right. So, yes, the humor is there, but it actually informs every piece of the writing, everything that you do. Even when the story gets dark, if you've got those really grounded characters who are treating it like a real situation, and the truth is, if you were a heroic person who was constantly throwing themselves into these gigantic combats and fighting situations, you wouldn't last very long.
Mm-mm.
So that's probably not how a real hero would act.
Mm-hmm.
So how would a real hero act? How would they think? What would they, and that juxtaposing that with those outlandish situations provides endless amounts of comedy if you, you play it right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, it's like the chain reaction book that I did last year. It's like the time travel thing, and it was tested on a cat, and she's freaking out. Like, you tested it on a cat and you thought you could use me next? How does that work? And so when you can add that twist of humor, it makes it lighthearted enough that you're like, no, this is not a thing.
And it increases your buy-in. People are much more likely to accept those crazy, wild situations if you've got a person in them who's reacting realistically.
So, Joe, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about book length. Okay, so in fantasy, the general category fantasy, of which Sword and Sorcery falls, how much page bandwidth would be if I was talking about a digital device, but how much of your book is spent on world building vis-a-vis your story and your characters? And the follow-up question to that is, how does that affect your final word count?
Oh, right. So there's two answers to that. The first is that my world building is extensive. I have a world Bible that's as long as any of the books. However, you don't see most of that. I tend not to do much exposition in the story at all. I actually kind of try and ignore it. And I do that for two reasons. One is because it's not always fun to read. And everything that a reader needs to know is going to come out in the conversations and scene settings and things like that you do. And fantasy and sci-fi they're both kind of notorious for doing this, for having extensive world building and exposition. So I think that it's more fun for a reader, for me anyway, when I read. I don't want to see everything all at once. It actually pulls me in a little bit more when I don't know everything, when there are things which I explicitly don't know, because then I want to find out. And so, whether it's just, where did the dragon come from, or what color is the king's toilet paper, If it's
Oh,
presented in a way as a mystery, I want to know. I want to find out.
Mhm.
And I'm talking about before he uses it. So, yeah.
So you kind
Did I
of
answer the question?
instead of the first 100, I'm using a crude example, but instead of the first 100 pages being devoted to world building, what you're saying is that you reveal bits and pieces of it throughout the book. Could be through dialogue, could be through scene description, instead of trying to do the whole enchilada all at once. Just
Yeah.
interesting.
I very much believe in hitting the ground running, and making sure that those first few pages, I'm really concentrating a lot more on character than I am on the world building stuff, because that's what's gonna keep people turning the pages.
Because this is just me as a reader, and CJ knows this because we've talked about it. I get bored after a while, and when I don't even know, the characters aren't well defined, the story arc's not well defined, because you're spending all the time, describing the world and how things work and that sort of thing. And the story and the characters kind of get lost in the transition there. And so I think the way you've described it is just perfect. I mean, that's awesome. Kudos to you. I think that's probably the most perfect way you can build your world at the same time, pulling in the readers with your story, and of course with your characters and how they act and react and that sort of thing. So good for you.
You mentioned that you have a world Bible for this world.
Mm-hmm.
So one question we ask people is, are you a planner or are you a pantser? I'm kind of assume, which I don't like to do, that you're more of a planner since you have a Bible of the world.
Yeah, I outline pretty extensively. Now I will go back and rewrite parts of my outline as I go, just because you get into it and you realize, well, I think that this character might not approach this the way that I had in mind. I think that something occurs to you while you're writing, and you're like, oh crap, I totally forgot about that when I was writing this outline. So you go back and you change it.
Mm-hmm.
But when on the rare occasions when I have tried to pants my way through, I just freeze. It's not good. The World Bible itself really comes from the fact that I have a terrible memory. So I just write down everything, and I'm constantly stopping what I'm doing and going and adding somebody, this tavern keeper in this town and this side, in this country, stuff like that. But unexpectedly, that came in huge handy. When I finished the last Misplaced Mercenaries book, I had this idea for a sci-fi novel that I wanted to write, and it was going to be a very small scale character study thing. And I had this really fascinating world that I had come up with, and I was telling Kelly about it. And everything I would say, she'd be like, and I was telling her about, the neighborhoods had flooded, and there were, there were sea otters that were competing with the alligators for, and stuff like this. But the guy was a CIA agent, blah, blah, blah. And she's, And I'm like, well, what do you think? And she says, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. You're not going to do that. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And because I'm thinking, well, I'm the writer. I'm gonna write what the hell I want. Mm-hmm. And she said, no, we're going to expand your Misplaced Mercenaries world and invite in other writers and create a shared universe.
Oh,
which stopped me dead. I'm like, okay, that's what we're doing. You're right. I was wrong. Forget everything I said.
right.
And so we are working on that now. excuse me, which has just been a phenomenal project. I am so excited about it. We're starting out with an anthology so that everybody can meet, excuse me, meet all the main characters in one place.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have a Kickstarter for that. We've got, in addition to, we've got 5 other writers who are also starting brand new series. So this upcoming year, we're going to be launching 6 new series all in this world.
Wow.
And for the anthology, we've got Kevin J. Anderson, Todd Fonestock, and Jody Lynn Nye, who are all contributing stories. They won't be regular writers, but they are contributing for the anthology. And we are just all over the moon about it. It's really, really exciting. The artwork has been fantastic. The stories that have been coming in have been great. I'm just so happy and excited about this.
Very cool. We only have a few minutes left, about 3 to 4. If you,
I got it in. I was really
I know.
hoping to get that.
If there was one gold nugget that you would be able to give to somebody who is interested in writing a book, fantasy, swords and sorcery type book, what would it be?
All right. You will, I don't think that you can very easily succeed. I won't say it's impossible, but I don't think it's easy to succeed unless you are writing things that you really want to read.
Mm-hmm.
That makes you happy to return to it. That puts your butt in the seat and your fingers on the keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've done that, then you can find an editor who who will hopefully see the story from the same point of view that you did and turn it into something that everybody else will want to read too. And you need to be okay with that process. But I don't think there is a more important piece of that than writing what you enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise you're not going to want to do it. I mean, why would you?
Yeah.
And a lot of people, they chase trends. They think, well, I don't like vampires, but vampires are popular, so that's what I'm going to write. And the lack of that joy, even if it's not like a joyous book, the lack of the joy in the writing shows through.
It does. Like when you're writing something that you enjoy, the passion just comes through on the pages. And you can feel it. You can feel all of the emotions that come with it. So 100% you are right.
Mm-hmm.
So this anthology thing, really quick, back to that. So
Mm-hmm.
Can you find out more about it on the Cursed Dragon Ship page? Or where can you find out?
We are just about to, we've sort of dribbled out information here and there. We're just about to start really hitting it hard. The Kickstarter is going to be later this month. But yeah, you'll be able to find out about it. Cursed Dragon, Facebook, my website. I also that short story you were talking about. If you sign up for that, you can also sign up for my newsletter, which once a month I send out funny stories. But I also keep people up to date on what's coming out, and so all the information will be there too. I would encourage anybody who thought they might be interested in any of this to sign up for it. You can always unsubscribe, and like I said, it gives you an idea right off the bat without spending a penny if it's something that you would like.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Well, you've been a treat to come on today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know that if you want to learn more about Kevin Pettway, I did that earlier. I am so sorry. Kevin Pettway, you go to kevinpettway.com. For those that are listening, it's KevinPettway.com. So you can check him out, check his books out, see, sign up for his newsletter, get that little free short story I mentioned earlier, and see if he's something you're interested in. In the meantime, next week we're going to be, because Mike mentioned story links, that's what our topic is going to be for next week regarding story links. And, where do they fit? Short story, novella, novel, graphic novel, where do all these story links actually fit and how do they apply to the author world? So in the meantime, we'll catch you next week, Wednesday, 1:00 p.m. Central Time, same place you found us, Facebook or YouTube, or if you're listening on the podcast platform of your choice. So in the meantime, have a good week, and we will catch you. Yes.
I'm going to be at Collective Con in Jacksonville, Florida, at the Prime Osborne Convention Center this weekend, Friday,
Awesome.
Saturday, and Sunday.
So those that are listening, if you want to come meet Kevin Pettway, you go to where again?
Collective Con in Jacksonville, Florida, at the Prime Osborne Convention Center. It's downtown.
Awesome. And Jacksonville's a really cool place to go anyway. So make sure to stop by and see him. And do you know what table you're at?
136.
Find him at 136 and check out his books and say hi. So we catch you guys next week. Bye.
Bye, everybody.